Yeah.
Some of it on elementary schools.
Right.
And I was oddly expecting to see him at class. Income. It's even.
Hello, everyone. We've checked your audio. Hopefully you can hear us, and I see some nodding, so I'm calling this CSI meeting to order. Thanks everyone for being here, whether in person or remotely. I understand there's a lot of fog and ice, so hard to get into the meeting necessarily in person. The first thing is the review of the agenda. Does anyone have comments? Not hearing any. I'll turn it over to roll call. If you could do that, Heather Ramirez.
So Amanda Sullivan Astor, David Bugney. Oh, Dave, I think you're on mute. Hope you see.
Present by video. My little space bar didn't. We're supposed to just be able to push down the space bar, but it didn't work. Sorry.
Gary Jensen. Gary online, it looks like.
I think I see him.
There he is. Glenn Ahrens.
Here.
Julie Woodward.
Present.
Paola Swanson. Michael here. Mauricio Valerio said he won't be here. Rick Zen. And Wendy Gerlach.
Here. Again, thanks for being here. Does anyone have comments on the prior meeting summary that was sent around? Hearing none, we accept that summary. Next item up is public comment, which if people are just listening in, this is a good moment for you to introduce yourself, say who you are and what you hope to get out of the meeting. So I'll leave a moment for public that are on the Zoom to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Miller. I'm with Ofri. I'm just listening in while I have other things I'm working on, but I figured it would be good to hear from y'all.
Thanks for being here. Anyone else? Teresa?
I'm Teresa Hauser. I'm a landowning member of the public here to just know what's going on.
Thanks for being here.
Good morning. This is Aaron Mickey. I'm taking the chance to listen in while I can today and getting some work done as well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
And Aaron is with Booty Cow.
Chair updates. As chair, I don't have any specific updates except there have been changes in the department. So I wanted to say thank you everyone for all the work the department does and in a time of upheaval. I don't know quite what word I would say. The people who are staying the course and doing all the great work you do is especially appreciated. So I just wanted to say that I'm sure there'll be a little more detail, and I'm really thankful you provided the org chart for us in the meeting. It's extremely useful for the committee. We're hoping in terms of updates to have Jake Ryan, a possible industry representative on this committee, join us later. Rick Sen can't be here today and he's retiring from Oslo. So he's been a wonderful presence, I think, on the committee, and I'm happy for him in his retirement, and I'm sure there'll be some update from Oslo. Just anyone have you look like you might have some inside information here.
His date, he's still on board till the 31st, but he's more working on specific projects. There's a committee formed already doing a search for a new executive director. They have a really aggressive aspirational timeline. They'd love to have somebody stepping in by April. That may or may not be actually feasible, but they're actively looking for. So any suggestions for places that we should send out recruitment stuff could be actually also helpful. I'm happy to share some of that information.
So you're on the committee?
I am not on the committee, but since I'm on the board, I do have the current draft. I think by Thursday, they have to have the final draft of the job description available. And I know I have the list of where things have been, where they're hoping to send that out, but if you have suggestions, and happy to share that. Because we do want a good, strong, I mean, we want to stay strongly represented. Forest community. Anything else you'd want to add to that, Dave, since you were at that meeting yesterday too?
No, excuse me, no, yeah, I got that draft and I provided my 2 cents and sent it back to Dan Newton. But the whole idea, given that aggressive timeline, is to try to be as pervasive or, expansive in advertising this position as possible. So, as Kate says, if you want to look at the draft that she has, if you can think of any other venues or places that we can send a notification to, that would be greatly appreciated.
So happy to share that at some point today.
Gary, are you wanting to, I see you might, I thought you were putting your finger on your unmute. Do you have something you want to add, Gary? Gary. We can't hear you, Gary, but no pressure to talk if you weren't planning to say something. Okay. And I see that Seth Barnes is joining the meeting. Hello, Seth.
Hello.
The next item I wanted to mention was just meeting organization and follow up on the meetings. And Kate mentioned this to me in the fall when you sent the email saying we have much work to do and we have fewer meetings now. How do we get that work done? I just wanted to share that I think the procedure for putting together our meeting agenda is kind of similar to how it's always been, or it's been since I've been on the committee anyway, which is that I sort of keep a running list of potential topics, and then I interact with Heather, who does a lot of work sort of putting together the agenda. And just as an example for this meeting, I tried to pull together some topics that came out of our report and the priorities we identified last year. So the SFO office and how the office can engage landowners and how this committee can contribute to the build out of that. Also, ODF workforce development. And I asked for an org chart, so that's so nice to see. Thank you. Private Forest Accord update and the commitment to moving that and the SFO forward. The board vision, so that's on our agenda, as you see. Update on legislative session, we have that. And then I had the Climate Smart Forestry Initiative and making sure that we get updates on that and getting SFO input about management, funding, and resilience measures. So I'm just mentioning this because I work on that, as I mentioned, with the ODF and the staff. But if people have topics that they feel are not being looked at as they would like, or if there's someone they want to come speak, please reach out in the interim between meetings, because since we meet less often, I feel sometimes like some good ideas maybe aren't put forward by me in a way that some of the members might like. So I think that will be a way that we can a little more aggressively make sure we have on our agenda things that we want to hear about, provide our thoughts on, and follow up possibly in smaller groups if we want to come up with some work product. I'm hoping that our presentations today will include some suggestions of way this committee can provide input on the small forest landowner issues that are at the department. Any thoughts on that? Teresa.
This is Teresa Hauser. Can you remind me on the rules around outside of meeting communication before there's a transparency issue, since this is a kind of public committee, and I don't think anything ever falls outside of that, but if a group of us started talking about something about, oh, wouldn't it be cool if CFF talked about that, I just want to make sure we're not running afoul of any what are sunshine laws essentially.
Yes, I think the amount of my understanding is that we communicate directly with staff, usually with Heather, rather than among ourselves, to avoid having an email meeting. That's like a serial communication meeting. So usually we purposely communicate into the department and then not out and creating a meeting kind of situation. So this, I thought was more like an individual person could contact Mayor Heather and say, well, we had suggested at our last meeting that so-and-so might speak. I was in touch with that person. They can do it. Can we get that on the agenda? Something like that.
The actual rule is basically anytime a quorum
Yeah.
is established, which is it's more than half of the group is meeting.
Okay,
It's just safer to run it all through us though, so.
thank you both for that.
Yeah. So not copy you on it, just directly to Heather. Right, I think we could officially set up a subgroup to do something that is purposely not a forum. Or like two people could work on a project, as I understand it, and then send it back to you, and you could send it out and say, here's a draft of some points we felt we could, provide to the department on this topic or something like that.
Looks like Seth has his hand raised.
What, hand raised? Oh, Seth.
Yeah, sorry to interject here. I was just listening to your conversation here, and is that still the case, given that this committee is not a decision-making body? Like I'm just curious whether it's material that this body is just an advisory body, as far as I understand it. Isn't that correct, to the Board of Forestry? And if that's the case, do all of those same restrictions apply? I'm just curious, and that ran across my mind, so I figured I'd interject. Thanks.
It is an advisory committee, so that's a good point.
To my understanding, it is still required because they are an advisory committee to the Board of Forestry. So therefore, it kind of like the Board of Forestry rules kind of bleed over to this committee in a sense.
And Seth, I think it may be in our charter too for the CFF committee. To kind of stick to the, what you call them, sunshine or the public committee rules. So I think it's in our charter.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting point.
I'll also throw in though that there's many of us that are ex officio that we're not voting members. So and those are the people you often come to, like Extension and others. So to have conversations like, hey, would this be, I mean, that was one reason this body made all of us that are helping landowners, ex officios and not voting members. We often are gathered somewhat together to do different events at different times. So it wasn't a violation in that way.
Well, I also think that you would have to be engaged in some matter of the committee, right? So, yeah, if you were simply enjoying one another's company, I don't think that would count. All right, that was all that I had thought to add. With that, I will turn it over to Mike for the division update.
So I had to go back and look and see when I'm sorry, Mike Broom. I had to go back and look and see when the last time was we met. I think it was September 12th, if I remember correctly in there. So since we last met, I was going to try and keep this high level because there's a lot that was going on. So I want to touch on, I sent around, I think Heather and Mark's going to send you the org charts for those online to kind of give you an idea of the changes to at least our division. The other one is just one I pulled offline for the agency and haven't really changed at all. So I'll get to those in a minute. I do want to talk about some of the federal programs that are going on with the state and then kind of give some updates on what we've been doing at ODF since September 12th. So, and then I know Jesse's here and we'll have a few other folks coming in and talking about some of the other things. I may introduce those topics, but I won't give details on that. I wanted to start off with our federal programs, just kind of give you an update of what I'm hearing anyway with those federal programs. I want to start with the Natural Resource Conservation Agency, so NRCS. With them, we have three programs actually that we interact with NRCS. The statewide program, what we call, second one is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which is a localized program. Then Joint Chiefs, which is kind of a very specialized program that we get involved with. So the two main ones we usually work with them are statewide and RCPPs. Statewide agreement, we're actually renewing the statewide agreement with NRCS this year, 2025, Lori Bell. So working on that. As far as I know, it will be in place by the next iteration will be in place by their federal fiscal year, I believe. We'll continue on. Statewide agreement for us is a special agreement. I think Oregon's the only one that has one for us to help do some NRCS work on small woodland owner property for any kind of NRCS work we have. So usually fire recovery or resiliency in your forest and so on. The RCPP, which is the Regional Conservation Program, we have two of them in the state. One's in Northeast Oregon, Enterprise, I believe. The other one is a new one that just came to Southwest in that Roseburg area. The one in the Northeast area, I think, is around $200,000, and they're doing mostly, I think it's fuels mitigation type work around houses. That one's been in place for, I want to say, about 3 years now. As far as I was continuing. The other one is down in Southwest Oregon. It was to the tune of, I think they got $9.9 million to do a lot of work down in the Medford area. It's centered around prescribed burning. So we're working with our protection program on what that means exactly, and who's going to take care of what in the agency. So you'll see a lot of that happening down in what we call our Southwest area. So Medford, Ashland, Roseburg, and so on. As far as I know, that one will continue on even with all the changes happening kind of in Washington, D.C. So as far as I know, those programs are going along statewide agreement. Statewide agreement is kind of picks up any of the smaller programs we have across the state. Another federal program we have is our Federal Forest Restoration Program. It's a program where we go and we actually do some work on federal forest land with our employees. It's usually typically in conjunction with some of the other work we're doing out on private forest land. As far as I know, that program will be continuing. That program is continuing on. The concern we have there, and with many of the Forest Service have, is whether or not we lose federal employees that we work very closely with. That's a concern we have because we've put together relationships with these folks that they start disappearing. We'll have to reform those relationships, and that could put a hiccup in some of the programs. But as far as I know, FFR will continue on. Forest Service, we have our normal, what we call our normal grants from Forest Service, Forest Health Forest Health, Urban Community Forestry, and blanking on the other authority. Sorry. Those will continue on. Those are normal. We typically get anywhere from $15 to $20 million for those every year. Those are our grants that kind of continue on year to year. The other one we have in place are the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act funding. Those are have been going on now for a good 2-3 years, maybe. Some of those have a 5-year time frame before the funding originally was supposed to come out. As of today, as far as I know, they're still continuing on. I have not heard of any of those being pulled back as of yet. I know if they have not been awarded, I think some of those are being pulled back. But if it's awarded and progressed, that funding should be around. That was at least as of today. That's what happens. Any questions on that? On the move to the changes with ODF. What's the other one up first, Heather? Just really quickly. I want to go through the org charts, just because we're a complicated agency. People what was going on here. So I want to put the one up there first, kind of the what we call the top line organ, I guess you call it executive team, leadership team. But they're now, wow, that's really small. Apologize for that. At the top, you'll see Cal Mukamoto, who is currently still a state forester as of today. I think today's his actual last working day. Taking vacation tomorrow and being on at the end of the week. So if you have an opportunity, he's actually over in his office. I won't say so. And Kate Skinner, who was, if you can see on this chart here, she was the district forester down in Tillamook a couple of years ago and was pulled in to actually fill in behind Mike Shaw, who was the one of two deputy state foresters. Thank you. Until Cal made his announcement at the Board of Forestry meeting here in January of his resignation. as of that day, Kate will be filling, as of the end of this week, sorry, Kate will be filling in as the interim state forester. I don't know who they're going to get to fill in behind Kate's the acting deputy state forester. I've not heard. We're kind of letting Kate catch her wind here, I guess, so to speak, and kind of make some decisions. So hopefully that'll be coming out very soon. I have not heard who that is. But if you follow the chart down, we are actually underneath our Forest Resource Division is actually under the old Kate Skinner's her old position as deputy state forester running the forest resources there with Josh Bernard and then myself, just to kind of show you how that organization chart works. As far as I know, this organization chart is not going to change format as of right now. So this should be the current format. Anyway, the names may change here and there, but the format should still be the same. If we move on to our division, there have been some movement of people in the division. I want to reiterate, people are still in their original positions. We have not changed any funding sources. It's just kind of moving positions around to better afford efficiencies within the division. That's the best way to put it. And the reason for that is we only have so many managers. We actually had one manager at 15 direct reports before we come this round. For those who have been around a while, ODF has working managers. So we manage people and we manage programs at the same time. So we're trying to kind of balance out the number of employees that managers have. Second point I want to make is just because an employee is underneath a certain manager on a certain chart doesn't mean they don't help the other units with the division. So as an example, if you look under Jennifer Ward, who's the second from the right, she is now the ACP reporting and training. She now has all the GIS folks underneath her. We put them all together under one manager. Since she's the training and reporting, we thought it best to have the GIS underneath there to help report specifically a piece of what's going to be coming out here. So with the credit for support, there's going to be some reporting requirements coming up here. So they're all underneath there. That doesn't end. And the way how it's going to work is as managers, we need to go prioritize the tasks across the division for GIS specifically. What needs to happen, those get set priorities. There's certain ones that come first. Forestry started Forest practices next. I get to that. Forest practices comes first, and small one that are. Those are all kind of priorities. Then there's secondary ones like making maps for somebody. So kind of secondary priorities. So we always prioritize what we're supposed to be doing as far as we got disasters. Jesse Ebert here. She's going to talk to you about the SFO office. So the two changes were between the major changes were between Jennifer's and Jesse's. We moved all of the forest health folks underneath Jesse because we figured it made more sense to have them all under the SFO office manager. Because a lot of those, such as I know you all know Christine Buell, Wyatt Williams, and Gabby Riddico, but they actually come out and help small owners a lot. So we put them all underneath the SFO office rather they were over underneath monitoring, I think, before, which didn't make any sense. So kind of balance it out. I know some companies managers still have quite a few people. A lot of them are limited duration, temporary employees. So keep that in mind. And I think, and then Jeff Burns came back as our federal grant support unit manager. We had Jenna Tremedy in there. She has since gone back to her position under Lori Bell. Just kind of talking a few chairs. As the incentives grant coordinator, she's the one that runs the landscape resiliency program and the small forest landing grant program. And then there are a couple other folks who moved around just to kind of better align the work. That's pretty much it. Just want to show the changes. If there's any questions?
Mike, thanks for that overview. Sorry to be late joining. Also, this is Kayola from the Conservation Fund. I'm sorry if I missed it, but you said Kate Skinner was going to take over for Cal as interim state forester. Did you say who would be filling her temporary role as deputy?
No, I have not.
Okay, thanks.
I believe it's going to be left up to Kate and a few others to make that decision, but I'm not sure. I don't want to guess. Yeah.
Don't guess. That's fine.
Any other questions?
Okay. Any hands up? If you wanted to speak up, that's fine.
Okay, I'll continue on. I got one last piece. Where's Nita goes off? He is back under Lori Bell in his NRS3 incentives coordinator position.
All right, seeing no other questions,
Okay.
well, are you done?
I just did not
Sorry.
get you more. Sorry.
Okay, keep going.
No, I'll be quick. Sorry.
No, you don't
Yeah.
need to rush. Go
All
ahead.
right. So since September 12th, we've done a few things I want you to be aware of. So I had to put the dates here. So on November 15th, we had NRCS conference and calibration training, is what we call it. It's required of anybody working with NRCS. Calibration training in that we were training our NRCS foresters to make sure that they're actually filling out the paperwork correctly for NRCS, so there's no hiccups along there. So fire training, that was on November 13th, had quite a few people attend that. So anybody working in ODF, working with NRCS needs to go through that training. On November 19th, so Josh Bernard is making it a point to actually get out to our districts to meet new people. So I went down and met with the folks in the Medford district just to kind of meet and greet and answer questions on any concerns they have. We're trying to do that, both Josh, myself, and Kyle Abraham, just kind of get out and meet the folks in the districts, just because we've had some movement in the districts too, some new folks showing up. So, which has been well received. It's kind of it's nice to get out of this office. So, December 3rd through 5th, we had what we call our statewide forest practice conference. I think Seth was actually at that, and he gave a presentation at our conference. These are conferences we typically do every year. I think we got out of practice with COVID. It kind of shut those down.
As was Kaola. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Kaola. Yep, sorry. She was, yep. How could I forget Kaola? She made it. Anyway, sorry, Kaola. Anyway, but these are conferences we typically do once a year. So the division did this one this year. It's this year. One of the area offices will do the next statewide conference. And what we use these for is we use them for training, for updates, for those who've been through our basic enforcement training. So these are just updates that have come along throughout the year. It's just kind of get everybody together, make sure everybody's not the same thing. We do have a training for kind of an introductory level for foresters. We have one of those on the year, but we've got new foresters coming in. We'll probably do one of those again. Not sure when. I'll have to get a hold of Jennifer. Oh, so Jennifer Ward, their new training specialist. Sorry, she's our new training. So she'll be scheduling some of this. Let's see. January 8th through 9th, we had the Board of We had a Board of Forestry tour on October 16th last year. Went out to Eastern Oregon area to the Prineville, John Day area. We actually drove around, saw some of the fire recovery going on out there. We had quite a few landowners where we had our employees going out and doing a lot of the fire recovery. Got all the fires. We had a group of folks go around, a team, to assess the damage, and they got all that done. I want to say in a month and a half. All the fire recovery out there, and actually got a pretty good number for the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. We got to give FSA long before the end of the year. I don't know what the amount is. Sorry, I didn't get it right in, but we have several landowners signing up for that. We have seedlings sitting. They'll be going to, in fact, they're probably there already. We have a Northeast Oregon district has a cooler where they're bringing seedlings, pine seedlings. So some of the landowners there, I think they able to pick up about 200,000 pine seedlings that they're going to distribute to the landowners, sell to the landowners out there. And I think in the years to come, they're actually going to try and grow and sell additional seedlings to those landowners out of the Northeast Oregon office with their program there. The seed orchard actually was able to get some additional pine seed, large seed they can't get, and so they have additional ponderosa pine seed for the John Day area that they'll be using to help landowners reforest in the John Day area fires that the Battle Creek those fires. So I wanted to mention that. So anyway, yeah, 1 or 2 we were I was just there for the first day. I wasn't there for the second day. Then the other Board of Forestry meeting January 8th through 9th. I think it was more. I was going to say about that. I think it was just the Dallas announcement that had the changes. Any questions?
No questions? Okay, now we'll turn it over to Jesse Ebert to present. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie Ebert. I manage our small forest landowner office here for ODF, as well as now our forest health unit, which is really exciting. And I just wanted to give some general updates of the SFO office progress for 2024, as well as some of our landowner engagement practices that we're hoping to implement in 2025. So for 2024 specifically, we rolled out the major ferns upgrade in December to incorporate new rules in SFO programs, gathered feedback, and subsequently updated ferns in August of 2024 to clarify and simplify the notification process for SFOs. We provided educational presentations to landowners to support increased understanding of rule changes and available SFO programs. We finalized processes, forms, and workflows for SFO emergency exceptions and significantly disproportionately impacted parcels. We worked with the training team to provide SFO forester training throughout the state to make sure that all of our foresters had a good understanding of the base rules of what it means to be an SFO. We worked with the Department of Revenue on information sharing and processes for the administration of the Forest Conservation Tax Credit, or FCTC. We finalized watershed availability for the SFO minimum option, which successfully went live on December 15th of 2024, making sure that landowners knew what was available for them in 2025. We contributed SFO program implementation section draft to the HCP and provided content review of relevant HCP chapters specific to SFO programs. Collaborated with field foresters and the field support team on completion reporting guide to help landowners with the new reporting requirements. We updated SFO forester guidance to help foresters more consistently administer the SFO programs throughout the state. We analyzed and evaluated RCA reporting requirements, implemented the flexibility period and tracking for road condition assessments, and gathered feedback and conducted a year-end review for the RCA flexibility period. We updated SFO office web pages and educational materials, refining language for clarity, adding RCA content, and planning to add the SFO minimum option content to expand the forest conservation tax credit information in 2025. We collaborated with Division GIS staff to create and deploy Scout, which is an SFO support tool to help field foresters streamline the workflows and improve reporting. We added 2 limited duration employees to help with the SFO data collection in 2025. Those 2 new employees are under Jennifer's section, like Mike had mentioned, in the training and reporting section. SFIsh ended up awarding over $5 million in grant funds in August of 2024 that will improve access to over 74 miles of habitat for native salmon and trout. Our SFIsh coordinator has participated and spoke at multiple OSWA and OSU extension events in 2024, like the Oregon chapter of the American Fisheries Society annual meeting, ODFW Fish Passage Task Force meetings, and restoration partnerships in the Umpqua and Rogue Basins. We had an SFIsh news release by the ODF Public Affairs that was done in August and picked up by numerous online news outlets, as well as an interview with NBC5 News in Medford, and a short feature on SFIsh that was published on their website and aired on the 10 p.m. news. And we also noted additional rule clarification needs for the future rule revisions to make rules easier for landowners to understand and resolve contradictory or unclear language as well in 2024. Any questions? That was a lot of information, so much, I know. Any questions or comments before I move on to our plan for 2025? Dave, go ahead.
This might be related to 2025 as well, but while I have not had this personal experience, a number of SFOs that I've been dealing with are concerned not about ODF, but about the ODFW mapping that's been going on to lay out the perennial and seasonal streams, the NP and NS streams, and that the mapping is in some cases inaccurate. You know, it'll show where there's really a road, it'll show up as a stream, or a channel that's not, doesn't have water in it. And so is there a way to interact? My question is there a way to interact with the appropriate folks so that that information can get clarified in a timely manner so that it doesn't, impede the work that needs to get done for these SFOs? Is there somebody, for example, does the chain of command go from ODF to ODFW, or does the SFO deal with ODFW directly, or how will that work, or should it work?
Yeah, everybody's looking at me, so. Yeah, so at least let your SFO know that, let them know. And then what they need to do is get a hold of Thomas Whittington, who's the one that's kind of spearheading that for ODF. And I believe Thomas is aware of this, or at least I've heard him talk about it. So SFO Forester, and then they should be giving that to Thomas Whittington. And Thomas will be talking to ODFW. I think I said that correct.
Yeah, you did. That's good. Kayola?
Hey, just wanted to say thank you, Jesse. That is an impressive amount of work, and I really appreciate all of the highlights you provided. I was just going to ask, is there a good way to kind of track like those articles or outreach? Is ODF reporting on that, or in the blog on the SFO page? Is that something I can subscribe to just get those updates too?
Great question. I know that we try to put that on our website as much as possible, and that's part of one of hopefully we will be able to work with our landowner engagement 2025 to make sure that more folks are able to subscribe to that. And one of our goals for 2025 is to even put together potentially having like an SFO newsletter that folks can subscribe to, where all that information can be found.
Cool. Okay, great. Thanks.
Of course. Seth?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Dave's comment. I was in a meeting just yesterday where that concern was being expressed by small forest landowners, and I think one of the pieces that may have been glossed over there a little bit is a nuance of that, which is when will those changes show up on the map? That is to say, you meet with your stewardship forester or your SFO forester, and you get the stream, typed correctly in the field. And then, months later, it's not showing on the map. And so that's causing some concern from the small forest landowner community that did something not happen? Can I move forward into, am I held at a stalemate until this map changes because the map still reflects the wrong stream or stream in the wrong place or whatever the situation might be. So any insight into that map and how often does that map get corrected per the water typing, I think would be useful.
No, good point, Seth. Yeah.
I know that too, in working with our GIS staff, there are some of them who work directly with ODFW on specifically those stream typings. And so kind of like Mike had mentioned earlier, just working with your forester to make sure that that's noted. And if you have the right information that you can provide to them, they can also throw a formal comment in that notification as well to make sure that that's on there so that they can proceed. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have the rules in front of me, but there are some kind of established timeframes when it comes to review of those in terms of the ODFW's role in that. But the one thing I would just mention is I did go and perform a number of flow permanent surveys this summer on my own ownership and interacting with some of the neighbors with regards to this particular concern. One thing I like to remind folks is that ultimately, it's what is on the ground and in terms of how the prescription of the rule, how the rules are applied and the protection of resources. And so, the map may not, quickly show corrections to some of these concerns with regards to where streams are and how they're typed, that it is ultimately that what is on the ground is what is used when prescribing and applying the rules. So I just try and remind them of that, and to try and provide a little bit of, I guess, maybe peace of mind and reassurance that even though the modeled stuff may not be accurate, that the rules will still be applied based on what's on the ground.
Josh is our SFISH coordinator for ODF.
Thank you,
Margaret?
I just wanted to jump in and say that it may also be helpful for like a small group to kind of navigate these updates together, because For those of you who are familiar with it, Land Mapper, which is a tool used by a lot of small forest landowners, does rely on these updates, and they have a certain time period that they go in and make sure that they're grabbing the most up-to-date layer. And so I would hate for there not to be a schedule that they're aligned and, they're grabbing a layer, right before you make significant changes. So I've been working really closely with EcoTrust, which is the organization that manages that. So maybe I can connect with the GIS team and we can make sure that those things are aligned.
So this is Kate. I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but Josh, that was great clarification that, what's on the ground is what actually matters. But I think the issue is going to ultimately be what's the process to make sure that on the ground truthing is actually straightforward, and like what is that process? How do you know that that's actually been clarified? So just because I know it's a concern, it is a concern for people. I mean, I know that we kind of laugh every time we go, it rains and we watch water running down the road and it's like, oh, that one's going to be a stream soon. So yeah, it will be I think it is an ongoing concern. I know that OSWA members are that there's a lot of concern. I'm just making sure it's clear, that things are clear and not extra work on people. And then they think they've done it, but then it turns out not.
Yeah.
So,
and I do know, I attend, we call, Josh Bernard has a group with the author group, or this concern didn't come up, so they are aware. And I know Josh Bernard is trying to work through it.
Models are always complicated.
I have a question, which is, do you get a sense of the amount of interest in alternative minimum option and the tax credit to the extent everyone's going to want to utilize that, or it will be rare?
The minimum option specifically seems to be what kids want to be something that folks want to implement. The tax credit, on the other hand, is still fairly rare for folks. I think where they get hung up is the 50-year deed restriction. But other than that, I'd say minimum option is more popular, but tax credit not so much.
And are there, you mentioned the clarification of the rules. Are there particular areas that people are noticing that are not clear? What are some of the areas where lack of clarity has been cited as a problem?
I think mostly some of the confusion comes in where there are words that could mean two different things. And so then folks tend to have more of a debate on that. And so more of our rule clarification is just making sure that those are clear so that it's in more plain language, I think, is what we're hoping.
And is that showing up in particular substantive areas? Is like in what part of the rules are people finding it unclear?
I don't think that there's necessarily like one concentrated area more than another. It's just more going over all of our SFO rules and making sure that they're in plain language.
All right, thanks. Dave?
Just a follow-up to your question, Wendy, and I think might be worthwhile. I thought I heard a statistic, but I might be wrong, that maybe only 10% of of those SFOs chose the tax credit option. And so this might be a worthwhile topic to discuss down the road to determine, if the whole idea from a public policy standpoint is to move people to adopt the tax credit approach, to have a wider buffer, but yet it's not being acted upon, if it's only 10%, then there's something wrong there. And so it seems to me. And so it might be worthwhile to somehow, whether it's us or whomever, to study this issue a little bit to find out, well, okay, what will it take to get 25% or 40% or whatever it is of SFOs to consider the tax credit option. And so maybe there needs to be a modification there, because to me, it's not effective public policy if that's where people want to drive the situation and it's not being acted upon. So just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Good point.
I have some of our kind of broader topics for our hopes in 2025 for landowner engagement. So currently right now, funded SFISH projects are in the early planning stages, and the program has dispersed over $220,000 to date, and will continue to disperse these funds and engage landowners in 2025. For landowner engagement in general with SFISH, and Josh can maybe talk a little bit more about this, but just hoping to continue to get word out there so that folks know what programs are available and making sure that we have those programs available for folks with the funding. And then looking at a new prioritization of funding and then going into 2025, moving forward with some of these projects. Another thing that we are looking at for 2025 is complete development of a comprehensive social media plan to include regular SFO focused social media posts throughout early 2025 to try to engage landowners in that way as well. We're looking at collaborating with our forest resources training team that Mike spoke about earlier to support existing landowner engagement events, as well as pursuing new educational opportunities for landowners and outreach opportunities with our partners, specifically with Partnership for Forestry Education. I think that that's going to be a big one that will be able to engage landowners in 2025. We're looking at continuously evaluating and update our website content in response to both landowner and forester feedback to support rule and program understanding and implementation. And then explore feasibility of our SFO office newsletter that I had mentioned earlier, and work with our available public affairs resources to help make sure that we can make something like that happen. Overall, hopeful for 2025 and excited in 2025 to work on engaging our SFOs more, but would love any input from this committee specifically on better ways that the department can help work on that.
This is Dave. Just a suggestion. I think what you just mentioned there is excellent. And if there was a way that we could take that information that you just gave us and distill it down into a short narrative of sorts, or even bullet points that we could incorporate into our newsletters. Because one thing that I've been finding, I'm our newsletter editor now that from the passing of our former person, and is that a lot of folks seem rather disconnected from whether it's the state chapter of OSWA or ODF in general. And so if there's a way that we can help bridge that gap, and I thought what you just rattled off was awesome. And I thought, well, let's just take some of that information, put it in our newsletters or put it on our websites, whatever it is, so that people can see, hey, there is activity going on here that is to their benefit. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe, I don't know how that would work, but we got some time. Our newsletter isn't going out till I have to have everything wrapped up in about 3 weeks. But if there's a way that we could get that information, I could get it into our next newsletter.
Actually, and I'd love to sort of piggyback on that with Dave, because like we have a quarterly one that goes out that I edit that goes out to 4 chapters. And so actually to be able to say those things, because I think the more ways people get the information, because I think that becomes a constant problem. How do we get people to access it? And different people access this information in different ways. So the more directions you can hit people from. I love the idea of a newsletter being developed, and we can keep linking to that kind of thing. And then the social media thing, especially as we have more and more landowners. I personally hate having to do it, but I do know that more and more people start sharing and paying attention to that. And, forests are very photogenic, so they're great on Instagram. True.
Can I make one more comment? Dave's point to Jesse's is Jesse is the SFO manager for the office, along with Lori Bell, who has a lot of the incentive programs. One of my goals as manager in 2025 is to get people to recognize Jesse and Lori as the SFO office. So this playing well into it. So if you ever have questions, those are the 2 folks to get a hold of for anything SFO. So let me get that message out there.
I think if I sent these bullet points over to Heather to disperse amongst the CA members, that might be beneficial, or do you have a better way for me to get that information out for folks?
I think I'll just ask the group
Sure,
right away.
yeah.
Because it looks to me, just looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Like Jesse is a really nice, tight bullet point list. There's the basis of what you just did. And to me, she was just offering, it seems to me it would work well for her to send that to the CFF group. If no one sees any problems with that, I think it looks like a lot of the work is right there on that piece of paper.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? I see Glenn.
Well, I see Josh's hands up. I'm not sure if that's
Right.
earlier.
He was there first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, yes, we're looking, we're gonna develop a more strategic approach for 2025 when it comes to outreach and communication and so forth for the SFO and, the SFISH program. I would still also say that SFISH is very much opportunistic, when it comes to outreach, that will still be part of the strategy. So I just encourage any of you, if you see, a place that it would make sense for SFISH or even potentially any of the other SFO programs to come and speak, inform, whatever it is, please reach out. And I'm more than, at least I can, speaking for SFISH, I'm more than happy to find time and prioritize those opportunities, even if they are kind of a spur of the moment. So don't rule those out.
Thanks. Glenn?
Yeah, I was just curious, Jesse or others. I couldn't quite see the org chart that well, but is the SFO, are you pretty fully staffed? And what's your impression of how everybody's settling in and, up to speed and I know the relationships, between the stewardship foresters and SFOs, foresters seem to be a little bit locally, they vary a little bit location to location. So I'm just curious about how that's all settling out, and is it pretty stable at this point, or is there more, recruitment or changes ahead?
Well, I'll let Jesse speak as far as the SFO office here in Salem, but I can talk a little bit about what's going on in the districts, or at least some.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the local, the map, basically.
From our office standpoint, Glenn, we are fully staffed, which is great. We have a wide range of folks that work with us. So we have our SFISH coordinator, our roads and tracking coordinator, our SFO implementation coordinator. We have an SFO training specialist that we have a GIS member that's specifically dedicated to SFO programs. And so I feel like we have a good wide range of folks that work with and for the SFO office. So from a Salem perspective, I feel like we're fully staffed and good to go there. But do you want to speak to the local?
Yeah, I know the local districts, well, as with any organization, I know they've got people coming and going all the time and moving on to kind of moving up within ODF. So I do know some of the districts are still hiring or rehiring some of the SFO foresters out there. There's, I think it'll be some continuous training for those positions, the districts. In the interim, Jesse's off, the SFO office does, we don't just train the SFO foresters, we train stewards foresters as well to know what's going on in the SFO world. So we're trying to do some double coverage, I guess, out in the districts is what we're trying to do. So anyway, I just kind of want to leave it at that. I do know there's some districts that are having trouble getting people into positions. It's just, I don't know if it's pay or what the job is or what's going on.
And is that for both SFO positions and stewardship forestry positions?
More so the SFO positions, but I think it could be where they are. Yeah, some of the stewardship forestry positions too, they have difficulty getting people on. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the local version is, who's in the office and who do the landowners kind of get to know and rely on. And in a lot of areas, it keeps changing so much that it'd be nice to make sure there's always some clarification or updates, maybe through OSWA and through extension about what's what in a given district.
We're encouraging the local SFO foresters to go to the OSWA meetings. I don't know if that's, hopefully it's out. Made it out.
We can look at Margaret's question, which is about whether one should distinguish between SFO and stewardship foresters or just say ODF forester.
Yes.
She's noting that
Say
both
ODF.
are trained, and is that confusing? So
I just say ODF forester. That's a good point.
I have felt it somewhat helpful to use those both terms though, because in terms of like this, for this group and our interests, like making sure that plenty of them are focused on small forest landowners, like is a priority.
Yeah. I know some districts, like Eastern Oregon, they have an SFO designated forester, but what their job is to instruct the other stewardship foresters, on any changes to SFO foresters. So that's actually working well. It's a good one.
Uh-huh.
And then they can help with meeting with small.
Just a quick follow-up to what we were talking about here with Jesse's stuff. What would be helpful, if it's not already in there, is that for some of those bullet points, if we could say, not only list the bullet point, we're going to do this, but say, this will matter to you because, if there's something that really might be sounding a little obtuse or something, to go, okay, well, so what? Well, it's important because this can do this for you, and that'll help create that tie-in. So that would be great if that makes sense.
I can absolutely make that happen.
Just on that note, I love that you're doing the partnership for forestry education, because that'll help also, I think, see those outreach opportunities. And like, for example, at OFRI, we do every newsletter, like quarterly bark, we have the opportunity to do an article. And then we also share that same article like with Dave and all the OSWA newsletters. So there's really pretty powerful one. It's not like I'm writing this for one, but I'd also, reach out to, if there's anyone in your public relations department that could take your bullet and help make it a little more of a like human impact. But what I'd also say, especially as you're thinking about social media campaign, is you now have this list of people who are doing amazing things. And I think if you could start also highlighting ODF people, because we've heard a lot about programs, and why I think the program's important, but I also think it'd be nice right now for landowners to start connecting with, there's real people in those programs that are wanting to make a difference. And so I think if you could think about like, what's that, not only the impact, but there's people that are wanting to make a difference, because you guys are doing a lot of great work as the bullet list shows, but kind of helped people, because as people who have watched ODF, there's been so much change and transition, right? That it's getting their hands around it. So I think if they can start to make some of those connections, so just a suggestion as we watch, but just so you know, like once you do one, these guys are amazing at helping to get it everywhere.
I'd love to have it.
Yeah,
because adding
that's
OFRI
been-
has been a huge thing to make our publication better. So that's awesome.
So happy to talk more about it too.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Do you think that maybe, I guess, two-part question with that highlighting the people, do you think it would be beneficial to do both like Salem staff that are working on specific programs as well as our SFO foresters that are in the field for that local level as well?
I think it would be, and especially, if you left that where then, like, this quarterly bark hits these 4 counties.
Yeah.
Like you could highlight some of those and you could plug in a little bit different for practice. That's the nice thing, that sometimes some of these will adjust for something we know that's in that area, but overall you might have a similar. So again, we can talk about strategy, but the nice thing with, and OSU Extension also does a lot of newsletters. And so there's a lot of opportunity to partner with your partners that are already out there to help get that information. But I'd also say utilize some of that staff you have too in public relations.
Okay.
That can maybe take the bullet list and help you, so you're not also
make it
having to do.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Margaret? I see your hand
Sorry,
up. There-
can you hear me now? I'm getting used to my headset that I have, and sometimes I have the little voice thing up. But I thought it would be easier to just jump on because I have been working with Katie Blavet. I don't know if I'm saying that last name right. And Jennifer and Nate and a few other ODF contacts to update our Know Your Forest page, which is our Partnership for Forestry Education webpage. And I was just opening up the web copy. I've spent a lot of time in that document, and I realized I don't think we have a lot on SFish. So I'm wondering, Josh, if that might be a good place also to put some information in there. I have a page on technical and financial assistance that would really heavily help, that Katie really helped me on, but we could add a blurb on SFish. I don't know if that's something you're interested in.
Yep, I'd be happy to help with that.
Okay, I can send you a message directly and then we can try to get your language put in there.
Because I do think the more places people can access information, that's helpful. Because we never know where it is that people do that initial connection to things. And I know the Know Your Forest website's a huge one. But yeah, it may seem repetitive, but that's kind of an educational thing, right? You know, when you're teaching, you know, you have to repeat something at least 3 times before you have any prayer that people have heard word one. But especially when we have such a variety of people. And as Dave, you know, was pointing out to us at a meeting yesterday, it's like we still have some that aren't on, you know, aren't very internet savvy or even capable because of where they are. But so, and figuring out all those different ways people connect in. And sometimes you just have to repeat it a lot before they're going to click on that link or read it or take it seriously. Because it doesn't always feel relevant. And then suddenly it does, and you don't know where to go. So
I have a question, and Kate's comment about needing to hear something 3 times might relate to this, because I'm wondering if I remember the SFish rules right. But I have a question about the funding of SFish and the adequacy of the funding. And I think what happened in Washington State was that over time, the demand for these projects exceeded the amount of money. And so it was really important to have as the program really gets going, important to have the funding commensurate with the projects that people are putting forward, because I think at the beginning, it was often people who were saying, we want to do this project with FDISH, and then as more road condition assessments were submitted, and in order to get a permit, people needed to do work that was funded by SFish. So I was wondering, this is probably maybe more a question for Josh, but in terms of how much the projects that are coming forward now, I'm assuming using up the available funding, is there an anticipated increase in volume of projects? And is there a plan for keeping track of that? Making sure that in the future, you're able to avoid the kind of backlog that happened in Washington State.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, just based off the, you know, the first cycle, you know, we had, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so these are going to be some kind of just some high level, what I remember numbers, but, you know, we basically had, you know, twice as many, based on some, you know, kind of screen level estimates, we had about 10 million or so dollars worth of fundable projects that we could would be eligible for funding, but we only had the 6.67 that was available, right? So we are already exceeding, you know, the amount of money we have available to fund these projects. And in terms of kind of any sort of long-term trends, are we going to get in as, you know, I guess maybe as big a deficit as Washington? I can only speculate, and I am more than happy to speculate and say that I would not be surprised if we get in that as big a hole as Washington. I mean, there are, you know, lots of culverts on the landscape. And especially on the forestry side, there's lots of culverts on the landscape that we're not even aware of, right? So just knowing that there are a lot of culverts out on the landscape that we don't know about, and we'll only continue to learn about, that, yeah, I would not be surprised if we end up in a fairly large deficit, if you want to call it that, as something similar to Washington. I'm hopeful that we don't. But yeah, you know, it's going to be a challenge, and you know, I don't have any great strategies, to be honest, in terms of how we maybe minimize the similar results as Washington had. A lot of that's going to be dependent upon, you know, the commitment of dollars to the program. You know, in the the PFA report, it did indicate for the program to, try and identify through time at least some potential funding sources on the federal side, which is, something that's on my radar, but is not something that I've dug into much. But it's definitely something that we will continue to pursue at some point, especially if, funding from the state side becomes less and less through time. So I don't know if that helps at all, but like I say, again, a little bit of a speculation on my part, but I wouldn't be surprised if we find at least a deficit, but hopefully maybe not as big as Washington's.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, one can't anticipate the future, but it does sound like a good issue to keep in mind that the funding will likely need to grow over time.
That'll be an interesting conversation to have during the legislative update. That doesn't seem to be the case.
Yes, perhaps a reality check. Someone's hand up?
Jake Ryan's here. Introduce Jake, showed up. Jake's here.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, hello. Mike Crew was just pointing out to me that Jake Ryan is on the Zoom and we wanted to welcome you, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm still getting things to work. I was a little slow. We use Teams, so switching over to Zoom was a little bit of a challenge. So I missed the introduction this morning, but yeah, my name is Jake Ryan. I work for Interfor. A little bit about myself. I graduated from Oregon State with a forest operations management degree and a business administrations degree. So my title at Interfor is procurement forester, but I'm their log buyer for their Longview division is basically what I do. So yeah, just happy to be here, happy to learn a little bit more about what goes on. And yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being here, and everyone can identify with switching from like Teams to back again and where the mute button is. So no problem. And we have a little time for more of a conversation later in the agenda, but we wanted to say hello and thanks at this point also.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. It's right time for a legislative update. So Jesse, Mike, if you had anything, or Josh, do you want to say in the end? No? Okay, we'll turn it over then to the legislative update. Derek Wheeler. Is Derek is
he there?
I thought Derek was on earlier. Just a minute.
Quick break.
What?
Want to take a break and see if we can find him?
Oh. We're pausing for a minute to check out Derek Wheeler's whereabouts, and we might just take a 10-minute break now if he doesn't pop up in a minute or two.
Great.
Keola, are you saying something?
I just said sounds good. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, thanks. Do you have a recommendation, or maybe we'll
I sent him a message, but I haven't.
okay, I'm gonna call a 10-minute break. And then we'll be back at 10:20 and have our legislative update then.
I still like it makes me, I want to send him a message now. I miss him.
Oh,
Yes.
we missed it. He has to come and like see that we have trees. Yeah, he will send it.
Welcome back, everyone. Here we are back. We're ready to resume, and I will hand it over to Derek Wheeler. Thanks for being here, Derek, for the legislative update.
Well, good morning. My name is Derek Wheeler. I'm a legislative coordinator for the Department of Forestry. Just want to give you guys a quick lay of the land and talk to some of the goings on that will be relevant to all of your work as you're going forward. I guess I would start with yesterday was the first day of this new legislative session. We've got about 6 months to get everything done. So that's mid to late June is the time frame. So it's a long 6 months. I always call it my fire season, even though it happens over the winter. But anyway, the work has begun. The large thing for us will be wildfire funding, and that will touch not only the agency but everybody here. I do want to preface that as we're heading into this legislative session, that the Department of Forestry is hardly the only agency that has budget needs. Most notably, the Department of Transportation has a very large budget need. There's housing, education, behavioral health. These are all big ticket items that will be discussed in this upcoming legislative session. And so I say all that to say there will be a lot of resources up for grab, but a lot of people will be grabbing. And so when we're going in with our wildfire funding work group results, we'll be competing in that same arena. Now, let's talk about what the wildfire funding work group is. And so it's a group of 35 folks that were formed out of last year's legislature to look at how we fund wildfire very broadly. So we have members from all over. We have, of course, us. We have State Fire Marshal. We're the convening parties. But we have health. We have utilities. We have tribes. We have counties, cities. We have 35 members, and anybody who has a nexus to wildfire in any sort of way, local landowners, large landowners, public, etc., they are at the table, and we're looking at how this will be funded. We're looking at new revenue streams, and we're looking at policy changes to our existing way that we fund and fight, so that the whole system itself just can be more affordable, particularly for small landowners. That has been the driving force for much of what we've looked at for the past couple of years. It has been my number one priority for the past couple of years is the cost to small forest landowners in terms of wildfire funding protection. It is becoming unsustainable, and I don't think there's any sugarcoating that. And that's been the impetus for a lot of this efforts. You remember 762 created the offset that was no longer funded. Last year, Senator Steiner had a bill 4133 that would sort of make policy tweaks to make landowners pay less, essentially, and that's what it was. Where landowner payments into the system would be lowered because those payments would be directed towards actual wildfire funding as opposed to things like Salem administrative costs. And so when we're talking about the wildfire funding group, we're still finalizing on our drafts and our policies. And I got to be honest with you, it'll be a large, almost omnibus package that we'll be bringing, because we're talking about policy tweaks. We're talking about different inputs into the system for new revenue streams. That could be lottery, that could be general fund. It's any number of things, and it'll be difficult to package. But one part of this whole nexus is taking the work that was done with House Bill 4133, Senator Steiner's bill, and moving those policy tweaks forward as well, so that we're not just looking at new cash into the system. We're also looking at ways to make the system more affordable for the existing payees that are in the system. So how that plays out, again, it'll be an interesting session. One more thing I need to put on everybody's radar is there's super majorities, and so this is the first time in my tenure that I've seen this. That means there are well, to pass or create a tax, you need greater than 50%. If we say, hey, we want everybody to stop at a stop sign, and that's your policy bill, 51% of people would make that law. But with tax, you have a higher threshold. And currently, there are enough Democrats in both the House and the Senate that they would need 0 Republican votes to move any tax measure forward. So that really colors the session as we're looking at this. When I'm talking about all the people that are all the agencies and all the needs that go out there, including our own, should be really interesting, to be perfectly honest, to see how all of this plays out. But I wanted to, for reference for this group is, our number one priority as a department is to get wildfire funded in a new way. Again, with inputs and policy changes, and our driving principle behind all this is simply to make wildfire more affordable for our landowners, particularly our small landowners. So that's the in a nutshell look at the legislative session right now. I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Yola?
Hey, thanks, Derek. Really appreciate the overview. I'm just wondering, with the fire funding being such a significant, I assume it'll be a significant lift and change, if we're really approaching it in a new way, what that looks like, how it's designed, how it's structured. Are there work groups that are happening in the background currently to think about alternative funding sources, or does that come after the legislation? And then my other question is, who are your key partners in advocating for this that we could also be supporting? If there's organizations that are also, standing behind ODF looking for this one.
Right. So I'll just unpack the group itself a little further. So we started meeting as soon as last session stopped. We were directed to start. So we got all 35 members, and again, this is we've got the health. What is it? American Lung Association. That's my favorite one because literally everybody you can think of in this realm is there, from conservation to timber. So to answer your question, if you name a group, I bet you they are there. they are at this table, and we have been meeting since early spring to get this going, and if we moved it all the way to now. We're finalizing the product this week, and we'll be presenting to Ways and Means. I believe it's next month is when we actually present. So in terms of advocacy for it, I'll have to pull up the list of 35. We call it Fire 35. Ironically, we don't have enough money to print those T-shirts, but we're working on it as part of it. And so it's the Fire 35, and I can share those people with this group because the Department of Forestry and the State Fire Marshal, like I said, are the principal actors in this, along with the governor's office. And we will be advocating for it, but those other 32 groups will as well.
Thanks, Derek. Sorry, clearly I was multitasking. Appreciate you saying that again. Thank you.
Any questions?
At this moment, I can't get too deep into specifics on what that product is from the work group because, like I said, we're putting a bow on it now, and I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Yeah. Derek, I've got a question just really quick. Is LRP and SFGP part of that? What you guys are working on, that fire group?
Tangentially, because we're looking at mitigation as a huge component of this. We're looking at community defense, we're looking at forestry resilience, and we're looking at suppression. We're looking at the whole. So one thing that ran afoul of us last time was that we didn't have support from local fire agencies. So let's talk about community building and the fire marshal there. And we need to expand into how we do landscape resiliency. That is a core tenet of how we want to move forward, is not just put fires out, but prevent them from funding. or from starting. And so mitigation, both on the landscape and in the communities, is a massive part of what this is. Is each one of those programs earmarked? No, not specifically, but it will be.
I have a question which is about messaging around fire, how fires start and fire prevention. We had at our last meeting a presentation about that, and it included a lot of interesting information about the leading causes of fires. I think like for the first time, like equipment started fires, including cars starting fires, was one of the lead causes. And I was wondering if what you're working on, I know it's not legislative, but anyway veers into messaging to the public about as climate change happens, as things heat up, people's like in the Willamette Valley, northern Willamette Valley, I think are much less used to the idea of, you know, where you park your car starts a fire. And it seems like that is more and more prevalent and not just an east side issue. So I was wondering if your group is thinking about changing messaging around that. You know, I see billboards on I-5 and they say, put your smoky hat on, but I sort of feel partly like I would like to see a sign that says your car is one of the cars that has potential to set a fire like this. So what, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I do, for sure. You know, hey, yeah, don't park over dry grass, right? To me, that makes a lot more sense than just somebody wearing a hat that says, you know, put your smoky hat on. Hey, you've got a trailer, watch your chains, because those are sparking fires left and right. But I will say that's not exactly my purview. That's really to keep Oregon green, and definitely not within my legislative space, even though I have a lot to say about it. But it is something I would keep the pressure on.
Uh-huh. Thanks. Julie?
Sure. Can you give any update on the board's, you know, budget and how that's looking? If I'm understanding, it's going to be kind of the package in February, and in relationship to like this group, who some of those majors that were funded fully last time, you know, to the extent that they may not be funded to the same, is there, do you have any feeling around those or any ideas?
I don't have the specifics right in front of me, and I don't want to.
Derek, it might just be me, but your mic sounds a little muddy. I don't know if there's a way to clarify it, but just mentioning that.
I've got a frog in my throat, but any better?
That's worse.
That's worse.
We can basically hear you. It's just a little muddy.
I don't know how to fix that, to be perfectly honest.
That's okay.
I'm going through because me and technology, that's not going to go great. Can you even hear that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say go ahead, but.
Okay, yeah, my apologies. In terms of like the actual specifics of the budget, we got pretty much current service level across the board. One of our big additions from the governor's recommended budget kind of speaks to the wildfire preparedness. Like we go into a system with $10 million in our pocket. That's what we go fight a fire season with. That we can spend that in a week or days, to be perfectly honest. That's not sufficient. So one of the big things is having upfront cash that we can go into that. In terms of some of the other programs that you guys would be interested in, I don't have that right at my heels. And quite frankly, my budget officer, he's always the guy who has that tattooed behind his eyelids. So I don't want to say anything that I'd be wrong about.
Yeah, so Derek mentioned the governor's recommended budget. That's currently what we as an agency are focusing on until, if it changes in the legislature, Derek. Yeah. I think I said that correctly.
Right. So the governor, along with us, creates this initial template of a budget, and that's right now, like I said, it's current service level. So any programs that we had, for the most part, I think there are some cuts, and again, I can't speak to them right now. That's what goes to the legislature, and then it's up to the legislature to craft any changes that they would want with them.
Gary, I see your hand up.
think it said his hand is up.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
Sometimes it tries
doing that.
Okay.
It's
But if you, yeah, there we go. Okay, no problem. No question there. Any other legislative information, Derek, or questions from the group?
Yeah, I would say it's real early to give a finger on what's coming in there. Day two. So, but I think you got hopefully you got a decent primer of what we're looking at as we're going in.
Really quick, Derek, when's the first cutoff date where bills fall off the table, so to speak? When's that?
That's a big date. So April 9th is what's called the first chamber deadline. A bill, there are exceptions, but basically a bill that doesn't make it through the first leg of the process to move to the next would be dead by April 9th.
If anybody has time on their hands, I heard there's 2,800 bills that are in legislature right
And they're
now.
expecting another 2,000 to drop too.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a number there. There's a big old pile. I tell you, I don't know what this means, but 4 years ago there was 900 pre-session filing. 2 years ago there was 1,200, and this year we're knocking on 3,000. There's a lot of bills.
Okay, well, thank you. Sound like we've covered that. And thank you so much, Derek. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, and I'll get the Fire 35 information over for you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Derek. I guess another way to phrase that is we at ODM support the governor's recommended budget.
Right. All right, so thank you, Mike.
Just a
quick and I think that was well said and succinct.
Yes.
So the next item we have is just a chat with Jake Ryan. Talk about this committee and thank him for being interested in it and as the industry representative to succeed Eric Kranzush, who was the last industry person. So Jake, thanks for turning on your camera and for your interest in the committee. You did give us a very brief sort of introduction to yourself, but maybe you could repeat a couple highlights of that and talk about some of your main interests in this area and whatever else you'd like to say is this expression of your interest.
Yeah. Well, I think my interests are deeply rooted in Oregon forestry. I got my background is I grew up helping my grandfather on a small private timberlands where he grew up and then he now manages. So that's where I got my start, just setting chokers and helping them buck logs and figured out I really liked it and went to school for it and ended up at Interfor. I started full-time halfway through 2020. And like I said, now I'm their log buyer at their Interfor Longview division. So super happy with my decision I made. I get to work with small landowners all the time in Oregon and Washington. And it's one of my favorite parts of the job. So I got invited to join this. Sorry, I really don't know much. I'm here to learn and hopefully, speak from an industry's perspective and someone who's passionate about small private active management.
Well, I think you might have missed the very beginning of this. No problem about that. But I gave a little overview of sort of how the committee tends to work. It's a committee that is an advisory committee to the state forester and the board of forestry. It has a charter that sets out how it functions, and it lays out its 7, I think, voting members and its advisory ex officio members, like people like Julie and Glenn Ahrens and others who engage in our conversations and help keep us informed about things. And the work that we do tends to be a mixture of engaging with the department staff, and they provide information to us and briefings, and we just provide some immediate feedback and comments and ask questions on that. And then we also want to be proactive as well. So come up with some ideas where we can do work where we like last year, we commented on some things under the private forest accord that had to do with small forest landowners, and looked at the website and provided some input. So it's a mixture, I would say, of our informing ourselves and going at the community and spreading information and being sort of intermediaries between the department and the community of small forest landowners in some ways. And then sometimes bringing information in and providing it back to the department. That would be my little blurb about the committee. I think it's satisfying work because it's a room where we can engage with one another and be appreciative of what the department does and provide some input about that as well. I will open the floor to other people on the committee to sort of make a statement if they want to Jake about how they see the committee and what it does.
I'll just say that I think Jake's perspective will be invaluable because we need to have that industry. And Interfor, just having worked with them before, is very tight with small woodland owners. I mean, they go out of their way to try to work with us, and they're, Jake, of course, knows better than me, but I think we're a substantial part of your market. And so with that, he comes with us. He comes to us with I think a good set of skills and background. So.
Thanks, Dave. No, excited to be here.
So Jake, this is Mike here in the room. I don't know if you can see me or not. One of the things that I keep hearing coming up, especially from small woodland owners, you have your Douglas fir markers, you have Lockyer cedar, but then there's these alternate markets that show up. One of those is Valley Pine, which I think is going to start coming up online here pretty soon. So it's some of those. It's an issue that comes up every now and then in small woodland owners because a lot of people are planting it. A lot of people have planted it. And so it'd be interesting to kind of get your take on that eventually sometime, whether or not you can actually turn that into a marketable product. Because I know I've had at least a half a dozen landowners come and ask me about what to do with their valley pine. So but that's the kind of stuff that'll come up in this meeting. It's just concerns like that. So anyway, you don't have to answer that.
I was going to say I probably do have an answer to that, but yeah, we can have time.
Yeah, I would say the discussion, as you can probably tell from today, varies from sort of micro subjects like that. Like sometimes we're talking about seed origin and who is refrigerator capacity or things like that, or changes in the planting season. And sometimes we're talking about things like later today, we're going to be talking about when Ben Donnelly is on the board of Forestry, we talk about the vision document that the board spent the last couple of years working on and what the next step is in terms of build out of that and how that would include small forest landowners. So like kind of high level vision down to some brass tacks of managing forest land. And the private forest accord being a big development, like certainly the small forest landowner office is something that we hope to be engaged in, and your input would be helpful on that too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, I'll try to be here for it all. I do have some meetings later in the afternoon, but yeah, I'll try to make most meetings and input an industry perspective when needed. So.
Yeah, our meeting schedule is pretty much quarterly right now, although we have some additional meetings occasionally. We usually have these ongoing meetings, sort of like meeting today, and then we do a presentation in September to the Board of Forestry, and usually have at least one little minor meeting in connection with that, where we put together a report and vote on what we want to present to the Board of Forestry. And that's interesting. It's our annual report, partly of what we've done, but it's also, to my mind, sort of a consolidation of the issues that have been important and what we want to say when we actually have an opportunity to go to Board of Forestry meeting. And usually a few people have the opportunity to speak directly to the board at that annual report meeting of the CFF.
One thing that I think Jake could be very helpful with is that just last week at our CCFFA meeting, Oswald came and gave an overview what's going on. And they were talking about an expanded hardwood market, just beyond alders, into other species like cherry and particularly figured maple is apparently starting to develop more. And so as time goes on, this would be, of course, a great asset to small woodland owners, and so I think that getting the industry's perspective of what they can do, what they're anticipating, what it would take to do any conversions or additions to be able to accommodate these markets and all that sort of stuff would be very helpful.
No, I agree. I think the hardwood market is very interesting right now, Dave. I think they're struggling very much from one, from a market perspective over the last couple of years. I mean, most mills have, but hardwood especially, high-end alder from what I know, cabinetry is still doing okay, but it's a struggle. And then also I know inventories at those mills are very low. The way the market was last year didn't prompt a lot of enthusiasm from small landowners who source a lot of hardwoods for them. From what I know, I'm not a buyer for hardwood mills, but I do talk to them, and just kind of those two factors, and then some uncertainty about stream expansions and what was going on really hampered harvest during the summer when they normally would see volume. So right now, if you got a stick of alder, I know those guys were looking for it, but that's kind of what's going on in the alder world. So I'm sure expanding to more species and whatever they can get their hands on to make some nice cabinets for folks, they'll continue to do and explore those options.
Yeah, the representatives, the committee member consists of people from around the state, right? So Mauricio Valero, who's our Eastern Oregon person, had a conflict today and can't be here. So one of the things we try and do is think about the different conditions around the state and different species, and make sure that there's seed banks that support those and other, support from the department for people all around the state.
And we also talk about workforce.
Mm-hmm.
For getting a lot of contracting done and the effects it has on small woodland owners when there's less workforce out there. We typically have a non ex officio from AOL here at the meetings to help kind of talk about it.
Amanda Solanaster often talks about workforce development, supporting programs to provide that around the state. Any other questions for Jake? Thoughts?
Hi, Jake, this is Teresa. I'm a landowner and just member of the public. One of the things I think is really helpful with having industry on this is that as the general public gets solicited more and more for their feelings about forests around the state, those feelings aren't necessarily always accompanied by an understanding of how the entire system works. And I know that the experience Kate and I had moving here and not knowing anything about forestry or timber or the economics of cutting a tree, and just being able to explicate for people that there are a lot of upstream and downstream effects if like a mill closes. So if a mill closes, suddenly small landowners in that area don't have a place to affordably send their logs because now their transit costs just became so huge. And I think that's a thing that as more and more people are further and further removed from understanding all the ins and outs of how this system works, they don't get it. And how can you? And so you see a clear cut and you go, wow, that's really ugly. And well, did you see all the little baby trees in there? And okay, so that's something you can learn. And the other thing you can learn is, well, those trees were taken somewhere. Anyhow, it's just sort of that whole systemic thing that small landowners and industry really need each other, and need to not gets separated by ideology that doesn't need to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you, Teresa. I mean, I couldn't agree more. You know, I don't think I personally run into that very much with small landowners. I mean, usually they're calling me to cut timber, so we're on the same page there. But no, I agree. From an industry perspective, small landowners provide various products to the wood products industry, from higher grade, doing longer rotations, to, like I was saying, hardwood, your alder, maple. Typically, you'll get some cedar products. So it's different than industrial timberlands, and I think it's a very important part of the system. So and like you said, going back to what you're saying about mill closes, and yeah, I mean, there's causes and reactions to every sort of decision like that, and mills that unfortunately do have to close down. Yeah, it's very impactful on the employees that work there, on the company, on the small landowners within that area, within the large landowners in that area. It affects everybody. So yeah, it's been a rough couple of years for the industry, but we're hoping to keep chugging through. But yeah, no, it's sad, and there's been quite a few of those over the last couple of years. So
yeah, one of the things we've focused on a lot as a committee is just thinking about the viability of small forest lands and making sure that the benefits that they're providing for the state, which are sometimes ecological, sometimes, like you point out, different grades and types of timber, that they're able to stay as forest lands instead of being converted to other uses because of economic non-viability. So that's something we focused on a lot. Yeah, I'm the chair, but I'm the member at large, so I'm not myself like a forest landowner or anything. I'm kind of connected with the conservation community, though, because I'm been involved with land trusts a lot. So like I was on the chair of Columbia Land Trust, and now I do some work for a coalition of Oregon land trusts. So I'm particularly interested in that myself. I'm speaking now not as chair, but as myself. And we also have Keola on as a conservation representative on the committee. So we do have a sort of a diversity of viewpoints and what we're looking for in terms of thinking of ways small forest lands can both be viable and provide benefits, economic and ecological and other kinds of benefits.
yeah, no, I think multiple perspectives is good. Managing for multiple perspectives. Like I said, that's kind of what I grew up with, helping my grandpa. It was more than just turning a profit, and I think that's why small private landowners are super important. They really care about I think big industry guys, they joke, they know the names of every tree out there, but I think that's super important. It just shows how much they care and how much they value the land. So yeah, no, I agree.
That's true. And we sometimes vote on things, and if we do something or finalizing something, is a provision in our charter, I think, that mentions that both the majority view and the minority view should be included in the recommendations that we would make to the Board of Forestry, which I think is appropriate because we have a range of views, and if we're going to be moving something forward and we have different opinions we want to put forward, that's the way we could do that.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good.
That's about it. I think unless I see hands up or people speaking up, I think we've covered the introductory conversation. Again, really, really nice hearing from you, and sounds like you'd be a good fit, and we'll take that into consideration. I hope they'll hang around for the rest of the meeting. We have a little bit of free time here because Ben hasn't hopped on. He's not scheduled till 11:15. So do people have anything they would like to talk about right now since it will be, looks like Julie might.
I was gonna say, can I do an update? I'm sorry, I have to leave early today. So if you have time, I could do the Opry update if that worked real quick.
Works for me.
Yep.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry. When he comes to the round table now, I think that's what you're suggesting too.
Yeah, just kind of a closeout with Jake joining the committee. Do have a formal process, Jake, to nominate, not nominate.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we actually present to the Board of Forestry our nominee for joining the committee. So that will be actually I don't have to talk to Josh. He's actually hoping to put that forth in the June Board of Forestry meeting rather than this one coming up just because of everything going on, legislature and everything, which is typically when we do the new nomination. So until then, you become a nominee, I guess, until you officially join, until the board officially calls you a member of the CFF. So it's just to let you know that.
Okay, thank
You
you.
would think that, go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I was gonna say, okay, thank you. I didn't know this was an interview, but
That's the process I go through.
Yes.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike, for remembering to include the process step. And Julie.
We just wanted to share, so I mentioned a few, but the illustrated manual for the course practice is at the printer to your process. We hope to have those out. Our goal is to have them available at Tree School, which is March 22nd. And so just again, reinforcing the importance of small woodland owners, that's what we're aiming for our big release on March 22nd, but also working with the department. We worked closely with Jennifer Ward on getting those out to offices and make them available. So just wanted to make sure people were updated on that front. And as Margaret mentioned, we're working closely with the Partnership for Forestry Education to update the website, the Know Your Forest. But if Margaret's there, I also wanted to give her a brief time because I really wanted to update this group too on some movement that's going forward that we're working closely with the department on the Unified Management Plan and about some exciting advancement there. So